Welcome. My name is Joosten and I am a human guinea pig. And I want to start my presentation with a question to you guys. Who of you knows the guy on the slide? I see some hands. You at the back? Yeah.
Supervise me, I do know he did make the move, but I haven't seen the full myself. He's also a guinea pig himself.
Yeah, that's true. He's Morgan Spurlock. He made the documentary Supersize Me, in which he ate at the McDonald's for breakfast, lunch and dinner for 30 days was the intent. And every time they had asked him if he wanted the supersize of his menu, he had to say yes. And what I found quite interesting about his story is that he gained 9 kilos after 2 weeks. And he has his girlfriend is a vegan chef. So that's really interesting. And she also was afraid that the diet he followed, the McDonald's diet, negatively influences his mood and his libido. And it was. And he had to quit his experiment after 21 days because of doctor's advice. But doing personal experiments is not quite new. I don't know if there are Romanian people in this room. No? Well, this is a guy from the beginning of the 20th century, Nicolae Minofici. Maybe you know him because he wrote a 200-page book in French and Romanian about the art of hanging. So he did all kinds of experiments where he hung himself. He tried all different knots. And that's where he wrote a book about. Another fascinating human guinea pig is Frederick Hussler. And he did some major breakthroughs about your digestive system because he found out that food takes about 52 hours when it gets in here and it gets out over there. But he also tried rather strange diets. For example, he ate sand and wood and charcoal. And he became very old. That's quite surprising. And there was one interesting fact about him is that he ate normally for 1 day in a year. And that was on the first day of Christmas when he ate at his mother's place. To give me a short introduction about myself, I'm a blogger on projectleven.nl. It's a Dutch blog. I blog about all the things I'm going to talk about. I also have a podcast. It's in Dutch. So if you want to listen to more interviews about these topics, go to the Project Leven show, subscribe on Stitcher or iTunes. I organize a summit. I will tell you more about it later. And I also organize biohacking meetups, and I will also tell about biohacking later on. And the last is a little bit odd, but sometimes I serve as a barista, and I serve bulletproof coffee, and that's my breakfast drink. And bulletproof coffee is coffee with butter and MCT oil, which is an extract of coconut oil. That's my breakfast now. If you want to know more about it, I will get back to that later in the presentation. And I asked Dimitri, is it okay to promote my own event? Well, he said it's okay. So if you want to know more about personal development, about hormones, about food, about training, about flow, about interesting things, and want to try bulletproof coffee for yourself, you can look on superlifestylesummit.nl, and it's on the 30th of April in Amersfoort. And there are all interesting talks about, I think, most of the things I'm going to talk about today. My goal in life is to become a superhuman, and what I mean superhuman is to excel on all, like mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. And I use the best practices from different angles. I look at ancient history. I like to use the evolutionary framework for some lifestyle things I'm doing. For example, I like to eat non-processed food. I like to do CrossFit. One of you know CrossFit? It's more like a functional movement. So you do handstands, but you also do kettlebell swings, etc. And if you might have noticed, I also am wearing these kinds of shoes, and that are Vibram 5 fingers, and they're barefoot shoes. So there's no, you kind of resemble like you're walking on barefoot. And for me, that benefits in my posture and walking. The second element are foreign countries. I like to look at foreign countries. For example, I drink kombucha, which is fermented tea from Japan. Sauerkraut from Germany, which is very good for your gut biome. Third element is science. I look at science, like for example on intermittent fasting. It's where you skip a meal or two. It's very beneficial for your body. Supplements, heart rate variability, which I come back to later. The fourth element is technology. I like to test a lot of apps, gadgets and wearables, and I will show you that later on in the presentation, what I measured and what I learned from it. And the fifth element is a little bit new, is that I'm started 2 months ago with some more testing with psychedelics. I know if one of you know ayahuasca, so that's it consists of DMT. It's called the spirit molecule. And I encountered some things which I think I cannot measure or compare with data, what I felt and what I saw over there. So if you want to know my quest about spirituality, you can also follow me on my blog. But the main foundation of my life are my experiments I do every month for about 2.5 years now. And I can divide them in 3 categories. Sometimes I try to include certain behavior, sometimes I try to exclude certain behavior, and sometimes I try to optimize certain behavior. An example of the first category is where I meditate every day for a month. I take 10,000 steps every day for 1 month. It's also quite interesting when you get home at 10 o'clock and you see on your activity tracker you only had 8,000 steps. So yeah, then I have to text my girlfriend that I'm going to be a little bit later because I have to walk around the block. It can also be, I did an experiment in January, so it was more a social experiment in which I try to talk to a stranger every day. So I'm an introvert guy, and it was really nerve-wracking every day to talk to somebody completely new. Sometimes I want to exclude certain behavior during a month. For example, no coffee, no alcohol, no warm showers, no orgasms. And sometimes I want to optimize certain behavior. For example, I did 1 month in which I tried to optimize my sleep, optimize my cognitive function, to learn a new language in 30 days. Last month I did an experiment on flow. How can you hack flow? And I did 1 experiment on breathing. So how can you use breathing to become warmer? You all know the Wim Hof method, I think. To de-stress, and also to use breathing for sports. And I also use some gadgets, and this is an example. This is a training mask in which you train your lungs to work harder. So yeah, I'm just putting this on, and it's very difficult to breathe. And then I do some exercises. Yeah, then I do some exercises, but I have to warn you, if you wear this during a run in the city, people are looking a bit of strange to you. So that's a negative consequence. I will come back to the experiments later on in my presentation. And I get asked this question a lot. Why the hell are you doing this? There are 4 reasons. I'm curious about my body, about my life, how I'm working. I'm curious about new technology. I like to test these kinds of things because I like new shiny things. Third reason is that I try to optimize my life. In almost all experiments I did, I found some insights, and I'm applying that in the rest of my life. At least I'm trying. And the fourth is that these experiments make me go out of my comfort zone. I noticed that when I'm just living my life, I'm doing things quite in the automatic pilot, and doing these experiments make me do certain things I would not do normally. Next in my presentation, I want to talk more high level about biohacking. Are one of you guys been here last year to this conference? Can I see some hands? So you're not allowed to say anything. If I'm asking the questions to the other of you, if I name the term biohacking, what are your associations? Can I have some thoughts from you? Okay, the other guys can also join. Nothing? Well, biohacking is not yet a clearly defined term. This is a model about biohacking, and I borrowed it from Amal Graafstra. And Amal Graafstra was one of the speakers of last year. He's from the United States of America, and he's one of the pioneers in biohacking. And there are a lot of elements on which are lots of trends and developments which you can coin under the term biohacking. These are body and mind hacking and quantified self on the left. And during the rest of the presentation, I will focus on that specific area because I do not have any experience yet with 3D bioprinting. In that this ear is for me, it's not 3D bioprinted. Also DNA, RNA hacking, do-it-yourself grinding. That all leads to quantified self, life enhancement and life extension, singularity and transhumanism. And for this part of the presentation, I want to give you some examples as all those elements. If you're talking about brain hacking, you can buy this online. It's a do-it-yourself transcranial diode current stimulation kit. And I have not tried it yet, so it's still in the package. But it says you can alter your brain waves using electricity. So you get into a state of high concentration or in a state of optimal relaxation for meditation, for example. This is about 50 euros. I'm a little bit scared, hesitant to try it, but I'm very curious because there are also now commercial variants of this technology. I want to use the music, if it's possible. This is a Think, and Think is a commercial application.
Mesdames et messieurs, dans quelques minutes, nous annoncerons notre descente finale vers Montréal. Il est présentement 10h45 AM à l'heure locale. Nous vous demandons maintenant de commencer vos visites personnelles lorsque nous
présentement avec Dan, the Automator.
Dell, when we were making that record.
New on the menu is Akumachi, finish them with garlic and parsley.
This one hydrolyzes triglycerides.
Well, who of you might consider buying these kinds of devices? Oh, that's good. I'm also interested in these kinds of devices. So you can use normal meditation, or you can use supplements or other kinds to alter your brain state. But why can't you use technology for it? Well, that's a couple of examples of brain hacking. And it's not only for types like you and me who want to be more productive during some work or programming, but it also has major implications for healthcare. For example, these are examples in medical professions where they're using brain implants to make people more productive, more happy, more whatever. This is deep brain stimulation surgery. There are a lot of elements around body and mind hacking. This is technology where they use artificial intelligence to learn blind people to see. So that's kind of expanding your senses or making new senses. It's also body hacking for me. And this is also quite interesting. One of the last biohacking meetups was about your gut biome, your microbiome. And there are people experimenting with fecal transplants. So that's when you use the poo of somebody else and you implant it in your own microbiome, your gut system. And it's quite fascinating because they did there are more bacteria in your body than cells. So there are also some people who are thinking that we're not our cells, but we're actually carrier of bacteria. And when you think about it, your bacteria have a major influence on your health. They're starting to know more about it. But one example is that they did a fecal transplant of a person who was very sick. And they gave him the poo and the microbiome of somebody else. But the other person was obese. And the person who got the transplant was a skinny person. And after a couple of months, like 6 months, the person who got the transplant also got obese. So they're also looking at the relationship between your gut biome and if you're obese or you're skinny. So that's really interesting. So you might think, oh, the other guy might feel shitty because he got obese, but at least his life was safe because his microbiome is good again. Another element of biohacking is this guy. Does any other medical professionals in the room? Scientists? No? Ludo? You also? No? This is Joseph Vacanti, and you might not know him, but he's famous because in 1998 he made the first mouse with an ear, and I could use the official photo, but I like this photo more. If you remember, there was a mouse with a human ear was grown on that mouse. So that's an example of 3D bioprinting. They're doing all kinds of experiments with growing and bioprinting new organs. And the third element of biohacking is DNA and RNA hacking. There's a lot of news lately about CRISPR-9 technology. That's a gene editing technology. There's also doing some interesting things about it. They're also thinking, maybe for you as hackers that's interesting, they're also looking at DNA as a source of storage of information. Because that's nature's way to storage information. Why don't you look at nature and new things as a good practice how to use storage information. And they did some experiments in which they put some stories of Shakespeare on a DNA sample, and then they shipped it and they could read it in another laboratory. So I talked about body-mind hacking, 3D bioprinting, DNA, RNA hacking. The most vivid example of biohacking, of course, is do-it-yourself grinding. And the most famous example is this guy, Neil Harbison. And he got an implant in his head. He was colorblind. And now he uses this implant to hear colors. So that's nice, that's a good thing. But what's quite interesting is that his senses expanded beyond our senses, because he can now also hear ultraviolet sounds, infrared sounds. So that's quite interesting if you think about biohacking, because he is colorblind, but why would I also want to see or hear ultraviolet or infrared or ultraviolet sounds? This is April Fool's, I already explained it. Did some of you heard this news? It was a commercial of MediaMarkt in which they thought they were going to sell RFID chips to chip your child, so you'll also know where your child is because the child is chipped. But I actually have a chip. 1.5 weeks ago I was at Galileo. It's a program on RTL 5. And in the presentation they chipped me. I have an NFC chip right here. So if one of you guys have an NFC phone, I have one with me. You can read it. You can read my chip. I'll see if it's working. Read text. And then it gives a sound that he read my chip normally. But it was quite interesting because this is like the version 0.1 of this kind of technology. But because this chip is only working as a kind of USB device. So that's an example. I have some information on the chip and I can read it. But in the television program, I was implanted by a tattoo owner. And the lock of his door of his tattoo shop and also the lock of his door of his car, he can open it with his hand. So he does not need car keys anymore or other keys, because he uses a chip in his hand as a device to open doors. So you don't need keys anymore. And what's quite interesting is that NFC technology, but I think you know a lot more about it than I do. It's also used in cards to pay. So he's also talking with the Dutch bank, National Dutch Bank. So in the future, you might think he can open his house with his hand, he can open his car with his hands, he can pay with his hand. So you're all getting rid of all other things. So in the future, you don't need anything anymore. Well, I find it quite fascinating. The fourth element of the biohacking model is quantified self. And quantified self, I'm going to give you some more examples later on in my presentation, but that's actually where it all started for me. I like to tell this story. It started 3 years ago, I think. And I wanted to go out for a run, like a 5K or some interval work, I don't know. So I put on my chest strap to measure my heart rate, and I put on my GPS watch. And I went out and I wanted to go for a run, and something happened. Either the GPS was not working or my heart rate was not working. And I was so frustrated by it that I went home. So I did not do the workout because I thought, well, if it isn't logged or measured, why should I do the exercise? And I told this story to my girlfriend, and she said to me, Peter, you really should do something with it. And she did not mean that I should visit some psychiatrist or something. So I started a blog about all the things I'd like to measure about myself and the insights I got. And later on I found out that there's a whole movement about quantified self. And if you're interested in it, you can look at quantifiedself.com. And there are all talks and lectures about all people who are doing all kinds of human guinea pigs experiments on themselves. Oh, before I forgot to mention, I will share all the links with you guys after this presentation. And they're also organizing meetups, and there's a conference 2 times a year, one time in Amsterdam, the other in San Francisco. And the other element, which gets a little more shady, I think, or interesting, you also might consider, is life enhancement and life extension. And there's a great article on Wait But Why. I think you know the blog. about cryonics. There are now 300 people around the world, or I don't know if you can call them people, but they are in cryonics. Either their whole body is in cryonics or their head is in cryonics. And what it means is that they're frozen. Yeah, but not technically frozen. You should read the article. It's another kind of technique. And the first person who got into cryonics was in 1973. Was a professor of Stanford, I think. And why are they doing that? Because they have a certain kind of disease. For example, if you're having, I don't know, cancer or something, and it's not looking good, you can decide to go into cryonics, and then they defrost you in 200 years, 300 years, 500 years, when medical science has developed and they know how to cure your disease. So I find it fascinating. It's very expensive. I don't know if I want to get into cryonics, but I found, and that's the same with life enhancement, life extension, human longevity. It's a company who's looking at aging and how can you prevent aging. There's other foundations like Long City where you can, if you want to know more, there's a whole community of people around the world who are interested in aging and how can you prevent aging and how can you prevent death. Well, that's mind-boggling for me. But it's not only strange people who are trying all those kinds of things. Do one of you know Calico, the company? This is a company owned by Google. Google invests money in Calico. The mission of Calico is also to prevent diseases and tackling aging, one of the life's greatest mysteries. And they're all very smart people working at these companies. So we might be thinking, oh, whatever, it's something from Star Trek or whatever. But the brightest minds in science and technology are working at these kinds of initiatives. One of the last elements of biohacking is the singularity. One of the famous promoters of singularity is Ray Kurzweil, also from Google. And where I first told you a little bit about cryonics, Ray Kurzweil is also writing about uploading his mind to a computer. So maybe that's for another hacker hotel, but that's also quite fascinating if you think about your soul, about philosophy. And it's not only on people like Ray Kurzweil who want to live forever, or the mind want to live forever, or whatever. You all can see that artificial intelligence is also for the greater good. This is Analytic. It's a company which analyzes radiology images, and they have a better score at identifying diseases than trained radiologists. So that's, things are happening right now. And that all leads to the bottom part, that's transhumanism. And transhumanism is more of a philosophical stance. There's also one independent presidential candidate in the United States who says he's a transhumanist. He's the first transhumanist presidential candidate. And transhumanism is actually about passing through the boundaries biology or our body has given us. So you can think about extra senses for your body, but you can also think about death as a limit that biology has given us. So there are people like this man with the beard, Aubrey de Grey, it's the most famous proponent of this philosophy. And he says death is a disease. We can cure death. We can cure death as a disease. And we're going to live forever. I want to live forever. Why should we die as a humankind? Well, I cannot see, I will get back to that later at the end of the presentation, what are the implications of these kinds of developments. If people are actually thinking about living forever. So from all those big mainstream trends and developments, I want to get more to practical, and I want to give you some insights about the things I measured and tried to improve about my own lifestyle. And in the last couple of years I did all kinds of lifestyle parts in which I try to measure and improve, and I want to give you some examples with that. And also want to give you some insights, hopefully. Where it all started for me was Strava. I don't know if one of you guys are cyclists or runners. I see one. Strava is great. I think this is technology which is very beneficial, at least to me, because you can measure how fast you've been on a certain training. But it's quite interesting because you also got segments in which you have a certain steep hill or something, and you can race virtually against anybody else because you measure the time you did on a certain segment, and then you can try to improve it. So it's for me that makes the training more fun. But that's on training, and there are a lot of insights about how we as a person actually need to move more. If you're talking about the evolutionary framework, we nowadays move too little, and you can boost how much you move by wearing those kinds of activity trackers. So this is a Xiaomi band. It's about 20 euros or 15 euros. It's from China. You can buy it with Alibaba. I tested a lot of them, also the Jawbone, the Fitbit, the Nike Fuel Band, etc. But you can also download an app on your phone. This is Moves. Actually, this is not Moves. This is an application built on Moves. Moves you just put on is an app on your telephone, and it measures if you're walking, how much steps you've taken, if you're cycling, if you're running. And I have that application on my phone, but I'm not registering it every day, like how many steps did I take. But for me, it's quite interesting because Moves also knows where you have been. And there's an application, this is Movoscope, in which you can, for me it's a kind of a diary. So I can look here above, I can see where, this is Amersfoort, this is where I live. And then I can do some filters. So this is this is a kind of heat map where I was during the weekdays, during the weekends. I see some more travel. Does it change from 9 till 5 compared to nightlife? Yeah, I don't go very abroad during nightlife. And for me, this is kind of, I like to do it between Christmas and New Year's. It's kind of a diary in which I see, oh yeah, that's where the grandmother of my girlfriend lives. This is where I had a weekend with my parents. This is where I did some cycling, I think, some tour. Well, last year I also went to Indonesia, so you probably see something over there. Where is it? Yeah. So this is all technology. I don't have to think about it. It's just in my wallet, in my pocket, and it just measures everything where I'm going. And now we'll get to the privacy later on. So don't be worried. I also have a weight scale which is connected to the internet, so I don't have to think about it. I get on the weight scale every morning, and then it logs my weight. And also my BMI, etc., and my fat mass. It's going down, so that's good. It also measures my heart rate. It also measures the air quality and the CO2 level in my bedroom. So if I want to do some experiments, what is the perfect temperature in my bedroom for my sleep, then I can use this weight scale. And in my experiments, I try all different diets. Do one of you guys know the raw vegan diet? No raw vegans in this room? Well, I tried all kinds of diets. I did a vegetarian diet, I did a vegan diet in which you're also not allowed to eat eggs, etc. Raw vegan diet, it's a vegan diet, but also you're not allowed to heat your food beyond 32 degrees. Well, I did that for 1 week and I lost 2 kilos, so for me it was kind of a crash diet. And I found out I did measurements in what I log my weight and I log what I eat with my MyFitnessPal. MyFitnessPal, it's an app in which you can say I ate a banana, and then you can then it measures how many calories are in a banana, what's the fat, protein, and carb intake of a banana. And what I found out is that not so much the amount of calories I eat influences my weight, but it's the fat, protein, and carb verhouding. The more fat and protein I eat, the more weight I lost. I don't know if it's working for you. What I want to say about it. Actually, it's kind of a hassle to do this. Because every time you've eaten something, you have to get on your phone and you think, I ate some eggs, 2 eggs, and I ate some flour, etc., or some broccoli. And that's quite annoying sometimes, especially if you're going to eat out or eating at your girlfriend's elder's place. I actually was in a restaurant where I had to ask the waiter, what are the ingredients of this dish, because I have to log it in my MyFitnessPal. Well, it's kind of strange. But actually, there are developments around this. I will skip this one. Google is working on a device on artificial intelligence where you make a picture of your food and then it knows your calories and also your macronutrients. If you combine this with Google Glass, I think it will be awesome. If I don't have to do anything about it, but my Google Glass takes pictures, and at the end of the day, it tells me how much calories I've eaten and the amount of proteins. So this is quite normal, but there are a lot of developments. Like this is a smart necklace. You put it on your neck, and knows what you've eaten. There are also wearables who say they use light on your blood, and then they know what your calorie intake is and amounts of protein and fats and carbs. And this is a project on Kickstarter in which you use a plate. You put food on your plate and then it automatically knows the amount of what's on the plate for etc. And there are also on Kickstarter there are also drinking devices in which work about the same. And this is also an interesting one which I found out is a device which lets you measure the amount of vitamins and minerals in your body. So you can all buy this actually right now. From training and movement and food to sleep. Sleep is very important. And I did a lot of studies with my sleep. 1 month I tried to optimize my sleep. Well, one of the tips I have for you is Flux. It's a software program which decreases your blue light. I like to read non-fiction. I can fall faster into sleep when I read non-fiction compared to fiction, and especially compared to looking at your smartphone. And if you want to supplement, you can use magnesium before going to sleep. It also has a positive influence on your sleep. And I can tell you a lot more about it. You can use an app, Sleep Cycle. I put my telephone on flight mode because you don't have the electromagnetic frequency from their smartphone. And based on the accelerometer in the smartphone, it measures your quality of sleep, if you're REM sleep, light sleep, or deep sleep. If you want to go pro, you can use a sensor which you put on your mattress. I have one at home, but I moved recently and I did not have the time yet to put it on my mattress. It's an Amfit. It's about €200. It's from Finland, and it measures your sleep, but it also measures your respiration rate. Can I see all the? It measures your heart rate, your respiration rate, and actually also measures how much you toss and turn during the night. So I actually toss and turn about 58 times during the night. And what's quite interesting about this is that I talked to the owners of this company, and they not only sell it to consumers like me, but they also sell it to elderly homes. And he told me that they found out that the elderly people are a lot of sexual activity during the night, and they can see it in their stats. One thing I want to tell you more about is stress. Heart rate variability is a very good biomarker of your stress level. And you can use apps for that, like the heart rate variability logger. But there are also specialized applications for this. And this is the M-Wave, and I have one right here. You put it on your ear. So this is not a 3D bioprinted ear. Let's see if I have the M-Wave. And if you want to know one thing about my presentation of today, if you find it's all bullshit and you have to know one thing, it's actually, for me, the greatest insights in the last years was heart rate variability. Because I always thought that my heart rate was pounding at the same frequency every moment. Like when your heart rate is boom, 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 it's good. But actually, this is an indicator of your autonomic nervous system. It's your parasympathetic, sympathetic, and your sympathetic nervous system. And if you have a coherent heart rate, so your heart rate is going faster or going slower, that's actually a sign that you are healthy and you're not in stress. Like, for example, this is my heart rate you can see at the screen. So I'm a little bit active and stressed now, but if I'm de-stressed and completely relaxed, you see a very nice coherent graph existing on the screen. But you can also use a chest band and a nap for these kinds of measurements. One thing I found out that meditation has a great benefits for my life on my stress level. So I meditate every day. That's one of the implications with my meditation experiment. And one thing I was wondering is that what does it matter if I meditate in the morning, evening, or afternoon? And I did some random tests with it. And I thought that during the morning meditation was better for me, but I found out that this is a device which measures your brain waves and the quality of your meditation and focus. And I found out that during the evening I had the best meditation. So that's what I'm applying. I'm meditating in the evening right now. I can give you a lot of more examples about all the things you can measure right now. And this is still measuring. This is uBiome. I also did a test at uBiome, and uBiome makes you measure your microbiome and bacteria. So you get samples. I have a sample of my mouth, my ear, my genitals, and my poo, and it's now in some laboratory in the United States, and they're doing analysis on it. And then I can see what my microbiome is looking like. That's microbiome. Does anyone of you know 23andMe? You know it? You also did a test? No. I get back to that later if you want it or not. But this is also, you spit into a sample, and then it also gets sent to the United States, and they're making an analysis of your genetic profile. So it's only $150 now, and they sample not the whole genome set of your body, but they sample a bit in which you can see how many Neanderthal or DNA you have, and if you're. There are a lot of studies in popular media about this. There was lately one study done that your DNA predisposed if you're a morning person or an evening person or whatever. It's quite fascinating because there's also that's technology in which you have to wait 5-6 weeks before the results come back. This is a device in which they say that you can do a blood test at home. And it's also working with microRNA profiling, in which you can also see your DNA. And if you're wondering, can you measure everything? Yes. This is an example which I did not test for myself. I'm not also quite sure if it's a hoax or not, but it's a device you can put on your penis and measure your calories burned and thrust, etc. Another favorite example is little movie I want to show. Can I use the music again?
We only have so much emotional bandwidth.
Bring it in.
And limited time.
Mustafa?
Our social circles are widening.
We don't know. That's bad.
All those relationships
Anything in general that makes you excited.
Just
can be overwhelming. Now there's an app. People Keeper tracks your physical and emotional response while you're hanging out. And it analyzes the data to identify who stresses you out, makes you excited, sad, or happy. See how your relationships stack up. And let People Keeper find the ones that work for you. It'll automatically manage your relationships, so you don't have to. Scheduling time with people that make you feel good. And blocking the ones that don't. Forget fake friends, failed romance, and FOMO. Optimize your social life with People Keeper.
Who want to use this app? It's an art project, so it's not a true app yet. I think it's interesting that they use this art project to know if you're measuring everything. I'm getting toward the end of my presentation. It's also nearly time. I get asked a couple of questions all the time when I give this presentation. So before we get to the real Q&A, I want to address them first. It's about, am I becoming happy because of all the measurements and improving I'm doing? Is it what's the impact? And also, what are the dangers? And there was an interesting study done lately, which suggests that measuring an activity makes it less enjoyable. And for me, I'm also actually I'm this month. My experiment of this month is measuring nothing for a month. So this is also only for the presentation. And I think that's a sort of counter move which is developing. Of all the measurement, all the improving, is it still working? And this is also a great piece on quantified self, in which a young woman got absolutely mad and neurotic about all the measurements she's done. And a great quote from this talk is, I was afraid of not being in control, of becoming obese like my genetic predecessors. I was addicted to my iPhone apps, to getting the numbers right, to beating myself up. And I talked to a journalist a couple of days ago. And for me, I think I do experiments every month, and I adapt my measurements and my tracking to the experiment I do. So I don't measure 20 things at a moment. So I think that's why I can handle it, and I also like the numbers. But it's quite interesting. She also asked me, what about your intuition? Do you think your intuition is improving or not from all your measurements? And I like to make the comparison with the movie Limitless, in which I give you a spoiler alert. It's about a pill, you can make us smart. And at the end of the movie, the main character does not need the pill anymore because he knows how to do it by himself. And I like to think of all my measurement and improving in the same way. So when I'm doing these kinds of measurements, like in sleep, I also like to reflect. So my measurement gives me this number on my quality of my sleep, but I actually feel this. So after a couple of days, can I quit my measurement of that certain area and can I improve it on other elements? The impact of quantified self and biohacking will be enormous. A lot of journalists think that I'm narcissistic, that I'm neurotic, I'm also doing it for myself. That's partially true, but I think the impact will be larger, especially on medical breakthroughs. I think you all know Apple Health Kit, and Apple Health Kit is more about the quantified us. So what if I can share my data with other people's data? Because the main concern of medical researchers is their sample size. But with this kind of technology, it's very easy to come up with a specific sample size of left-handed diabetic patients, male patients from 50 to 60. So I think that quantified self, new technology, is going to lead to major breakthroughs in medical science. But there's also a dark side. What if your employee gives you an activity tracker? In Holland, the legal institution on privacy, they declared that it's prohibited for companies to give their employees an activity tracker. And I think in America, employers are doing it. They're giving their employees an activity tracker because they think an active employee is more happy and is more productive, which leads to more money for the company. Yeah, that's hacking. That's nice. Maybe I'll do it next year if I'm invited to Hacker Hotel. But there's also a way to hack these kinds of activity trackers. But not only your employee, there are also insurance companies who are giving away activity trackers to their clients. And it's not only activity trackers, but there's also an example in the Netherlands about a car insurance company which gives technology in the car in which you can lower your premium. But not only are these examples, but your data is also owned by a commercial company, which can lead to interesting things. Because Fitbit, and this was a couple of years ago, their default setting was public of all your activities. But they did not realize that you can also log your sexual activity in your Fitbit. So there are a lot of people angry because they found that their sexual activity was, that they thought they logged for themselves, got on the internet. And it's also interesting because I showed you Moves, the app in which you can log your time and distance. I showed you 23andMe about your genetic profile. Now think about this. Moves is owned by Facebook. Facebook also owns WhatsApp. So in theory, Facebook knows a lot about me. Take 23andMe. They now have my genetic profile. I also use Gmail, Google Calendar, Google Drive, etc. Google also knows because I have another activity tracker from Google where I'm walking, like a sort of Moves. So Google also knows a lot about me. I'm not sure what I have to do with it right now. I like to see myself as a human guinea pig and start a discussion about it, but it has major implications. And that's only about measuring things. What about the biohacking part where I started my presentation with? This is an example in America where elders voluntarily told their school that their child had a certain kind of gene, which can lead to a certain disease, and the kid was kicked out of school because of his genetic profile. Well, I thought this is Hacker Hotel, so I do something with hacking. This is Mark Goodman. He's a futurist, and he wrote an article about hacking the president's DNA. So in the future, you can program a virus, a DNA virus, which is targeted on a specific person. And you think, well, that's all future, etc. But actually, everywhere President Obama is going, the whole room is swiped. They don't want any DNA covers of Obama in the room because they're afraid of this kinds of developments in which viruses specifically target at Obama or Mark Rutte or whatever. Based on DNA, RNA. Oh, I can. Yeah, I can share the link afterwards of the research. That would be great. So there are a lot of things about measuring, and I will get to the Q&A right now. If you all follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc. Yeah. Yeah.
It's also be very easy to think about a certain group of people.
Yeah.
And I figured out that actually skin color is much less determined in the DNA than other parts. So it was almost impossible to create this virus, which I think is actually very helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, nice. I think I'm also on time, but maybe you can. Yeah.
What are the big insights you gained during all those experiments? What are simple things we could apply, for example? Simple things.
Yeah. I find that measuring my heart rate variability every morning is very powerful. It's only 3 minutes you have to do the measurement, and it gives you very good insights in how if you're healthy. The second one is it's named a lot, but meditation. For me, that's like 10 minutes in a day. If you think 10 minutes is too much, start with 3 minutes. Really, just start. And the last one, I don't know what's your definition of low-hanging fruit, but for me, cold showers, it's really awesome. So, cold showers, I will also advise. Yeah.
Andere vragen? Other questions?
The thing I'm wondering, the question I want to drop is dropping a question, not getting an answer. I think quantified us is really good, but before they get a quantified us, you will need to provide a quantified self. And how to cope with that's my question. And if there was an answer, it would be nice, but the quantified us will help all of us, and yeah, the quantified self is what makes me fear to join it. I hope you can make sense of it. Anyway, thank you.
So you mean that to develop the quantified us, first a lot of people have to start with quantified self? Is that what you meant? And you're a little bit hesitant.
There needs to be a proxy to analyze yourself.
Yeah.
And at the other part, it's important to have what you are telling us, left-handed people, diabetic, to find a group, have a large scale. All the pharmacists, the drug producing people,
big pharma,
they tell us, we did research, and we could all contribute to this research. I eat chips every day, very greasy, and he died at 40. But telling in the beginning, okay, I'm eating chips, that scares me somehow. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you also indeed have the self-reporting bias. You also have the privacy bias. So, like you said, I don't have an answer to your question, but there's a lot of, there are people who are thinking this technology development and quantified us will be the end of big pharmaceutical companies. Yeah, but there has to be done a lot before we really get the benefits of quantified us, and also think about autonomy and privacy, etc. Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, Edwin.
I have a little bit of a small question. I've obviously seen a lot of those apps, and one thing that I'm always a little bit surprised about is that almost all of them give like a funky kind of graph without any confidence intervals, without any possibility of doing autocorrelation, time series analysis, correlation between different kind of statistics. Are you interested in that? Because I believe you have a scientific mind, and having the right tools might actually enhance your quest in measuring.
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. It's one of my criteria when I evaluate apps and gadgets. For example, this is a Xiaomi smartband. It's cheap, it's nice, etc. But it does not have the export function. So I also like to use export the raw data and to do my own analysis with it. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
You can actually export raw data from the rebank if you download the event tools app from the Play Store. You can get a CSV file.
Okay.
You can set the interval at which to measure, which ranges from continuous.
Yeah.
And we'll get measurements every 10 seconds to like hours or something. I got one as well. So.
So it's already been hacked. That's nice. Or developed. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty open API. It's being reversed pretty good.
Okay. Nice.
Other questions? Okay, and I'd like to conclude with to thank Peter for his great talk and give him a warm hand of applause.